Erev Tov, everyone. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be the Torah study with Rabbi and Reb Reuven. Excuse me. Okay. So, last week, we left off with our in-depth study of the Torah. We are in the Sefer Shemot, and last week we finished the Parsha Shemot. Obviously swallowed that wrong. Last week we finished the Parsha Shemot, and we are getting ready to go into Vayera. But before we do, the second half last week we went through the little Midrash says to get caught up there. And this week we're going to start out with going into the Sefer Haggadah, which is the book of legends, which comes from the Talmud Midrash. A little more in depth than what we got into the little Midrash says. So we'll get caught up there. Let's see who we have with us. Wow, they filled in really quick here. Last time I looked, it was just Donald in there. So we have Donald, we have David, Shoshi, Marshall, and let's see who else. Nora, probably Colleen. Yeah, okay, Colleen. And those watching in the background. Ralph being among them. Good to have you all here. Hope you will come back often and join us on the site. We are wrapping up the year. As you know, over the past few years, at the urging, let's call it urging of my wife. Where after 13 years of doing this year-round, she finally put her foot down and said, no, you're going to take the summers off, and we're going to go fishing, and we're going to do some other things. So, on Memorial Day, we will conclude our studies for the summer, and then we will return. We'll have to see, because Labor Day actually happens, and then the following week, Rosh Hashanah happens, and then of course right after that we have Yom Kippur and all the holidays after that. So we may come back for a week and then be off for a couple of weeks and then return, but we'll see how it goes. And depending on how this mishgas of reopening and so on and so forth goes, we'll see. Maybe we'll run our story partway into the summer. We'll see. Kelsey Lynn has joined us. Good to have you. Okay, so before we start, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivav l'sok b'divrei Torah. Okay. So, we are going to start out here with the servitude in Mitzrayim. Again, we are from the Sefer Haggadah. So, we start out, I found that Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first ripe of the fig tree and at her first season. Reb Reuven said, at first a fig tree's fruit is picked one by one, then 2 by 2, then 3 by 3, until the figs ripen so abundantly that baskets and shovels have to be used to gather them. So too, at the beginning, Abraham was one, and he inherited the land. Then 2, Abraham and Yitzhak. And after that, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. until finally the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mightily. Okay, interesting that the way they phrase it here. They waxed exceedingly mightily. Okay? Now, some may look at this and say, okay, well, it's kind of a odd kind of a statement that actually comes from Shemot chapter 1 verse 7. And it said this does seem kind of odd, or kind of a strange way of phrasing this, that okay, well, why didn't we just say that they waxed exceedingly? Okay, they were fruitful and multiplied a great deal. Well, that's not all that's going on here. When it talks about waxed exceedingly mighty, it's actually talking about two aspects. It's talking about, number one, they were fruitful and multiplied, and they waxed exceedingly. However, in that waxing exceedingly, they also became mighty. Okay, so we have two aspects going on here. Okay, Ted has joined us. Ted, I caught you early this time. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Now, there arose a new king over Mitzrayim. From Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Rav and Samuel differ in their explanations of the verse. One said that he was actually a new king. The other that new decrees were issued by him. But if so, how can the verse go on to say, who knew not Yosef? Exactly the point I've been making a lot. As you know, I beat it into the ground when we were going through the first parasha. And actually the last parasha of Bereshit. Who did not know Yosef, because it seemed as though he was not aware that Yosef ever existed. Exactly. Now, if you want to learn a little more, go and look up the Hyksos. Okay, which actually means foreign ruler. Okay, the sage is asked, why then is he called a new king? Was he not the same Pharaoh? What happened was that the Egyptians said to Pharaoh, come, let us attack this people. He replied, you are idiots. To this day we are eating what one might say belongs to them. How can we even think of attacking Joseph's people? But for Joseph, we would not have survived. When Pharaoh refused to listen to them, they deposed him from his throne for 3 months until he said to them, I agree to whatever you wish. Then they restored him. Hence, there arose a new king, signifies that Pharaoh was forced to issue new decrees. Now, again, I disagree with that, okay, which is the great thing about the Talmud, okay? Very few times do we ever see complete agreement on anything in the Talmud, which is really a great safer, because the question always remains open for further discussion, which is a great aspect. We don't find that in any other religious text in the world. It's basically, here it is, this is the way it is, and you better suck it up and believe it, and that's all there is to it. However, in Judaism, we continue to question it to this day. And as we get more information, you know, at some point, of course, they had to close the Sefer. Otherwise, you know, it would just continue on. So we have the Mishnah and the Gemara, we have the Talmud, and we have the additional writings. We have Rashi's commentary, and we have the commentaries by his Tosafot, and so on and so forth. And at some point they have to say, okay, let's stop. Because, I mean, it's 28 volumes. At least the set that I got is 28 volumes. And if they kept going on, it would just, get unmanageable. So what happened after that? Then we started getting into responsum, rabbinic decisions, which we maintain records of those too. Every group has their own set of responsum, and we also have other writings like the Tanya and so on and so forth. So the scholarship continues to grow. Okay, so, and again, from my studies and what I've read in the Talmud and so forth, I've come to the conclusion that that Rav was actually correct. That this was a different king. And I've talked about King Paro, King Paro, King Paro. Okay? So, and then when we go into the historical record, we actually find there was foreign rulers in Mitzrayim. They were called the Hyksos. So, anyway, let's get back here. The sages asked, why is he called a new king? Okay, we already talked about that. Okay. Hunun not Yosef. When Yosef died, Bnei Israel, saying, let us be like the Egyptians, abolish the covenant of circumcision. After they did this, the Holy One turned the love of the Egyptians had for them into hatred, because they abandoned the mitzvot. They abandoned one of the primary mitzvot. I mean, it's the first mitzvah that a child actually performs or is performed for him, which is the mitzvah of Brit Milah. Okay, so they abandoned this, just as we see some Jewish groups today actually doing the same thing, bowing to political pressure and all this other stuff, when scientific evidence proves all along that our people were absolutely right on this subject. Okay, so once they abolished circumcision, they basically, insulted Hashem. So Hashem says, okay, you want to play that game? Then hey, we'll, you know how the Egyptians used to like you? Well, that's all over with. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so turn the Egyptians, the love the Egyptians had for them into hatred. As he said, he turned their heart to hate his people, to deal craftily with his servants. That is from Tehillah 105. Okay. Let us deal craftily with them, from Exodus 1:10. The text does not say with them, but with him, which implies, so asserts Rabbi Huma, son of Rabbi Hanina, that Pharaoh said, come, let us deal craftily with Israel's deliverer. How shall we afflict Israel? Asked the Egyptians. Shall we afflict them with fire? But Scripture says that in retribution, the Lord will come with fire, from Isaiah 66. And by fire will the Lord contend. Shall we afflict Israel with the sword? But the verse continues, and by the sword against all flesh come then, let us afflict Israel with water. For the Holy One had already sworn that he would not bring another flood upon the world. As it is said, I have sworn that the waters of Noach should no more go over the earth. What the Egyptians did not know was that he would indeed not cause floodwaters to go over the entire earth, but might not cause such waters to go over even a single people. But conceivably, a people may go and fall into the waters. What happened to the Egyptians? Thus Scripture, the Egyptians fled to the sea's approach, but the Lord hurled the Egyptians into the sea. From Shemot 14. He connected with what happened to the Egyptians. Rabbi Eliezer constructed scriptures as saying, in the thing that the Egyptians cooked up, in the very pot where the Egyptians cooked up their mischief against Bnei Israel, they themselves were cooked. Okay, just catch up here, see if anybody else has popped in on us. Okay, so, and we got a few in the background, not in the chat room, but that's okay. I mean, if you want to be in the chat room, come into the chat room. They're a pretty good group of people in there, and they don't bite. They don't bite very hard, at least. Okay, so, and they embittered their lives with harsh labor, and in all sorts of work in the fields. From Exodus, from Shemot, chapter 1, verse 14, what is implied by in all sorts of work in the fields? After finishing their work in mortar and bricks, the Israelites would return to their homes to rest. Then the Egyptians will come and say, go out and gather greens for me in the garden patch. Split this log for me. Fill this cask for me from the river. Hence all sorts of work in the field. So they spent all the day breaking their back making bricks. And as soon as they get home, then the Egyptians say, hey, while you're just sitting there doing nothing, why don't you go do this for me? Go cut my grass for me. Yeah? Okay. What does the scripture mean by with all the tasks that they ruthlessly imposed upon them? That the Egyptians imposed men's work upon women and women's work upon men. Thus, a man would be told, up and bake, and a woman will be told, fill this cask, split this log, go to the patch and fetch some greens. Rabbi Samuel bar Nachmani said, why were the Egyptians compared to Maror? Since we just passed Pesach, 34 days ago. Well, let's see. Yep, 34 days ago. Okay, because sunset has officially happened now. Okay. So we're in the 35th day of the year. To teach you that just as maror is soft as it begins to grow and then hard at the end, so were the Egyptians soft and mild in the beginning, but tough and hard in the end. Okay. Therefore, they did set over them, not over them, but over him. Again, in the school of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Simeon, it was taught the use of over him implies that to con Israelites into believing that Paro himself worked at making bricks. A brick mold was brought and hung around the neck of Paro, and whenever an Israelite complained and he was too delicate for such work, he was asked, are you more delicate than Paro? Okay. Yeah, and Colleen points out these bricks still stand to this day. For the most part, yeah. Okay, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve them with parakeh. Parech. Rabbi Elazar said, the word means with gentle speech. Perach. After Paro said, let us act craftily, he gathered all Israel and afflicted gentleness, affecting gentleness, said, I beg you, as a special favor, work alongside me today. Then Paro picked up a basket and a shovel, and everyone saw him pick up the basket and the shovel and work at the making of bricks, and they did likewise. Thus it came about that the Israelites worked to the fullness of their strength, and with great eagerness alongside Paro. But when it grew dark, he stationed taskmasters over the Israelites and said, reckon up the number of bricks. After the taskmasters counted them, the Israelites were told, this is to be the number you are to provide me each and every day. Okay. Every boy that is born ye shall throw into the Nile. Rabbi Hannah said, what did the chaste and virtuous Israelite woman do? They took their infants and hid them in holes in their houses. So the wicked Egyptians would take their own young children, bring them into the homes of the Israelites, and pinch their young until they cried. When the Israelite infants in their hiding places heard the Egyptian children cry, they cried with them. Then the Egyptians would seize the Israelite infants and cast them into the Nile. At that time the Holy One said to the ministering angels, descend from my presence and look at the children of my beloved Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov being thrown into the river. The ministering angels, and Rashi actually talks about this in his commentary, the ministering angels rushed headlong down from his presence and, standing up to their knees in the water, caught the children of Israel in their arms and set them upon rocks. Then out of each rock the Holy One brought forth nipples, which suckled the Israelite children. Rabbi Avarim expounded, Israel was redeemed from Mitzrayim on account of the righteous woman of the generation. When they went to draw water, the Holy One for their sake caused so many small fish to be scooped up in their pitchers that only half of what they drew up was water and the other half was fish. They would then heat 2 pots, one with hot water and the other with fish, both of which they brought to their husbands in the field. There the women washed their husbands, anointed them, fed them, and gave them to drink. Then, lying secluded between mounds in the fields, they responded to their men. After that, they returned to their homes. When the time for giving birth came, they went into the fields and gave birth under an apple tree. As it is said, under an apple tree I aroused thee, and there thy mother was in labor with thee. There was she in labor and brought thee forth. From the Shir HaShirim. Then from the heights of the heaven, the Holy One sent an angel who cleansed the infant and massaged their bodies in the as the midwife does to make the child look beautiful. Then he selected for each of them 2 breast-shaped stones, one filled with honey and the other with oil, as it is said, and he made him suck honey out of the crag, and oil out of the flinty rock. That's from Deuteronomy. Then the Egyptians became aware of these infants. They came to slay them. But then another miracle occurred, for the infants were swallowed up by the ground. At that, the Egyptians brought oxen and plowed the area where they had disappeared. But as soon as the Egyptians left, the infants burst forth out of the ground like grass in the field. And the infants grew up, and they came running to their homes in flocks. Later, when God revealed himself at the Sea of Reeds, those infants now grown up were the first to recognize him, for they said, "This is my God." And that's from Exodus chapter 15. In Egypt, the Israelites gathered to dwell as a group, all of them becoming as one, and they covenanted to act with loving kindness toward one another, to be loyal to the covenant of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, not to forsake the language of the house of their father Yaakov, and not to adopt the language of Mitzrayim, because it might lead them to idolatry. And when Israel in Mitzrayim continued to circumcise their sons, the Egyptians would say to them, "Why do you circumcise your sons? Will they not in no time at all be flung into the river?" Israel replied, "We will circumcise them nonetheless. You do with them as you wish. He who is to die will die. He is to be slain will be slain. And he who is destined to live will live." And the king of Mitzrayim spoke to the Hebrew midwives. This is Pua, Shua, and Pua. Who were the midwives? A woman and her daughter, that is, Yocheved and Miriam. So said Rabbi Samuel bar Nahamani. Miriam was then only 5 years old, but she would accompany her mother and attend zealously to all their needs. Miriam was called Pua because she defined Hophia, Parom, all but thumbing her nose at him, saying, "Woe is to the man when God comes to settle with him." Pharaoh, filled with rage, was about to have her put to death. Seems to be a thing in this family, doesn't it? He's going to kill Moshe, now he's going to kill Miriam. Okay, but Yocheved, who was actually Miriam first, and then Moshe, because Moshe hasn't been born yet. Okay, so I'll put her to death. But Yocheved, who was called Sifira, because she used to soothe over her daughter's impudence, conciliated Pharaoh by saying, "Need you pay attention to her? She is only a child and doesn't know a thing." Okay, let me get my bookmarks here. If I can get my bookmarks here. Okay, book cooperate. Okay. Okay, but they kept the men children alive. The phrase of the midwives here, goes beyond the praise given them in the first part of the verse. Not only did they not do what Pharaoh told them, they even dared to do deeds of kindness for the children they saved. In behalf of poor mothers, the midwives would go to the houses of rich mothers and collect water and food, which they gave to the poor mothers, and thus kept their children alive. Okay, so now we move on to the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu. And there went a man from the house of Levi. Did Avram, the man referred to in the verse, go anywhere? No. Nowhere. Nowhere. So taught Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavina. But Amram went and acted upon his daughter's advice. He, as is well known, was the most eminent man of his generation. Aware that Paro had decreed every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, he said, we labor in vain, and was the first to divorce his wife. At that, all the others divorced their wives. Then his daughter said to him, Father, your decree is more cruel than Paro's. For Paro had decreed only against the males, while you decree against both males and females. Paro decreed only concerning this world, while you decree concerning both this world and the world to come. Now, since Paro is a wicked man, there is doubt whether his decree will or will not be fulfilled. But since you are a righteous man, your decree is sure to be fulfilled. At once he went and took back his wife, and so did all the others. And he took. Scripture does not say he restored, but he took. Implying, said Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavina, that he took her back in a formal wedding ceremony, setting her in a bridal litter. Miriam and Aharon danced before her, while the ministering angels sang, the mother of children will again rejoice. That's from Tehillah 113. As Rabbi Yehuda, the patriarch, was once expounding a scripture, the congregation became drowsy. Now, imagine that. Imagine that. A rabbi talking and the congregation become drowsy. As such a thing has probably never happened before. Okay. So anyway, the congregation became drowsy. Wishing to arouse them, he said, a certain woman in Mitzrayim brought forth 60 myriad infants at one birth. A disciple named Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yosem, was there, and he asked, who was this woman? Rabbi Yehuda replied, it was Yocheved who gave birth to Moshe, deemed equal to 60 myriads of Israel. Okay. Became drowsy. Okay. She took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. It is taught the bitumen on the outside and pitch on the inside in order that the infant was to grow up so righteous should not be made to smell the bad odor. And his sisters stood afar off, from Shemot 2. This is what is meant by the statement that Miriam stood afar off. Rav explained that Miriam had prophesied, my mother is destined to give birth to a son who will save Israel from Mitzrayim. Now remember that both Yocheved and Miriam Zadokets, and they actually prophesied. Okay, so even Miriam at this very young age was prophesying. Okay, and so when Moshe was born, and the house, all of it was flooded with radiant light. Miriam's father stood up and kissed her on the head, saying, "My daughter, your prophecy is fulfilled." But after Moshe was put into the river, her father tapped her on the head and whispered sadly, "My daughter, what is to become of your prophecy?" Hence the verse is to be read, and his sister pondered over what would be done to him far off. Pondered over the ultimate outcome of her prophecy in a time far off. And she sent her handmaid, Paro's daughter. Okay. When the handmaiden saw that Paro's daughter wished to save Moshe, they said to her, "Our Lady, in the world's practice, when a king issues a decree, even if the whole world does not obey it, his own children and the members of his household do obey it. Yet you would violate your father's decree?" At that, Gabriel came down and smote them to the ground, leaving the princess but one handmaid. Okay, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. I do have a tendency to kind of ignore the chat. I get going on a roll, so I'm trying to be better about doing that. Okay. I shall go and call thee a nurse. This is Miriam speaking. I shall go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew women. Why of the Hebrew women? The question proves that Moshe had already been taken around to ever so many Egyptian women to nurse him, but he rejected all of them. For the Holy One said, "Shall the mouth that will speak to me suck anything unclean?" And she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, etc. This would be the handmaiden. Pharaoh's daughter used to kiss and hug Moshe, loved him as if he were her own son, and would not allow him out of the royal palace. Because he was so handsome, everyone was eager to see him, and whoever saw him could not turn their eyes away from him. Sound kind of like Yosef, huh? Paro also used to kiss and hug him, and Moshe used to grab Paro's crown and put it on his own head. The magicians of Mitzrayim sitting there said, "We fear this one who grabs your crown and puts it on his own head may be the one, as we have been saying, who will take your kingdom away from you." Some of the magicians suggested that he be slain, others that he be burned alive. But Yitro, who would become Moshe's father-in-law, Yitro, or Hobab, or whatever name of the 5 names they called him, but Yitro, who sat among them, said, "This child has yet no understanding. Why not test him? Place before him a vessel with a gold piece and a burning coal in it. If he reaches for the gold, he has understanding, and you may slay him. But if he reaches for the coal, he has no understanding, and a sentence of death is not called for." The items were brought at once. Then, as Moshe put forth his hand to grab the gold, Gabriel came down and shoved it to the side so that Moshe could only seize the coal, but also put the hand with the coal into his mouth and burned his tongue. As a result, he became slow of speech and slow of tongue. Okay, so now we're at the point where Moshe is going to go out and kind of mingle among his brothers. Okay, and he went out unto his brethren, and he looked on their burdens. How did he feel as he looked on them? As he looked on their burdens, he wept, saying, "Woe is me for your servitude. Would that I could die for you, since no work is more strenuous than that of handling clay. Anybody who's dug clay knows how difficult that is. Moshe used to shoulder the burdens and help each worker. Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Yosef, the Galilean, said he saw a heavy burden put upon small people, and light ones put upon big people, men's burdens upon women, and women's burdens upon men. The burden that an old man could carry on a youth, and that of a youth on an old man. So he would turn from time to time, step away from his retinue and rearrange their burdens, making believe that his intention was to be of help to Paro. In other words, basically, let me show you a more efficient way of doing this. You take this, you take this. This way it's more efficient. Okay. The Holy One said, you left your own concerns and went to look with compassion at the distress of Israel, behaving like a brother towards them. So I too will leave those on high with those below and speak only with you. Another comment on he looked on their burdens. He saw that they had no rest whatsoever. So he said to Paro, when a man has a slave, and a slave does not rest at least one day during the week, the slave will die. These are your slaves. If you do not let them rest one day during the week, they will surely die. Paro replied, go and do with them as you say. So Moshe went and ordained the Sabbath day for them to rest. Okay. And he saw an Egyptian. Now this is about the Egyptian he killed. And he saw an Egyptian. Who was the Egyptian? The father of the blasphemer, whose mother was an Israelite, and whose father was an Egyptian, from which we are coming into Leviticus 24. And the verse in Exodus goes on, beating a Hebrew. The Hebrew was the husband of Shelomit, the daughter of Divri. What preceded the Egyptian beating the Hebrew? The account that follows will explain. The taskmasters were Egyptian, but the foremen were Israelites. And one taskmaster over 10 foremen, and one foreman over 10 Israelites. The taskmaster used to go around early in the morning to the foremen's houses and get them out to work at cock's crow. Once, Solachachas Mara, right? Once the Egyptian taskmaster saw that an Israelite foreman's wife, Shelomit, the daughter of Divri, who was beautiful, free of any blemish, and he cast his eye upon her. So the next day at cockcrow, he went to the foreman's house and quietly said to him, go gather your team of 10 men. Then he hid himself behind the staircase. The moment the husband left, the Egyptian got into the bedchamber and defiled the woman. So it happened that the husband turned back and saw the Egyptian as he was leaving the house. The husband re-entered the house and asked his wife, did the Egyptian touch you? She replied, yes, but I thought it was you. When the taskmaster became aware of the husband, that the husband had found out, he put the husband back to heavy labor and beat him all day, saying, work harder, trying to kill him. And he saw what had happened and what was now happening through the Holy Spirit and the Ruach HaKodesh. Moshe saw that the Egyptian had done what the Egyptian had done to the Hebrew. in his home and what he intended to do to him in the field, and said, "It is not enough for this wicked one that he defiled the wife. He is also determined to kill the husband." And when he saw there was no man, he saw that there was no one who would be zealous for God and slay the Egyptian. He smote the Egyptian. Okay, so this is a little different spin than what we've read before. Okay, he looked around and saw. We thought, okay, well, he looked around and saw nobody was looking. But actually, what the rabbi is saying here is that he looked around and saw nobody was going to do anything about it. So, might as well do it himself. Taking a shovel used for mixing clay, he split the Egyptian's skull so that his brains spilled out. Okay. And he smote the Egyptian. He hid him in the sand. Moshe said to the Israelites present, "You are to be like sand. When sand is taken from here and put over there, it makes no sound. Even so, let not a word about what I did issue from your mouth." Now, we know that that didn't pan out very well. So we are halfway through our time now. So let's take a break here. Okay. I'll mark my spot so I don't lose it. Okay. So we're going to take our break here, and then we're going to because we've got a ways to go to get caught up with Vayera. So when we return, we will continue with the Sefer Haggadah. So please, everybody, stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Sure, my microphone is on. Okay, so get back here and get myself set. David brought out a point in the chat. See, I am paying attention to the chat. When it talked about the children, the males being circumcised. Yes, on the 8th day. Circumcision happens on the 8th day. And there's actually an interesting medical fact about that is that they have found, obviously our ancestors knew this thousands of years ago, but it took modern science until more recent times to figure out that for a newborn child, the keratin level, which is the clotting factor of the blood, so I understand, starts ramping up during the first 8 days. It ramps up to its peak on the 8th day, which I believe is something like 130%. And then after the 8th day, it ramps back down to 100%. So, hence, the wisdom of the 8th day of circumcision, because that's the day when the child is at least danger from the circumcision. So, okay. Okay, and again, and we talked about this before. The circumcision takes place on the 8th day, regardless of what the day is. The only time it's postponed is if the child's life would be in danger. Like if he's sick on the 8th day, or he has some kind of an issue. In some cases, the child is never circumcised because it is dangerous for the child. Like if he has hemophilia, he would not be circumcised. There's also other laws that said that if the mother had miscarried twice before, I think it's twice before, that the child is not circumcised for fear that it would put the child's life in danger. However, if the child is healthy, it is circumcised on the 8th day, regardless of the day. Even if it is on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. If it's the 8th day, the child is still circumcised on the 8th day. In fact, if you look into a machzor, any machzori, basically, you will actually find a section in there where it says, okay, at this point, the child is going to be circumcised. Any child that is going to be circumcised will be circumcised at this point during the Shacharit service. Okay. So, getting back to our Sefer Haggadah, thinkest thou to kill me as thou didst kill the Egyptian? And Moshe said, surely the thing is known. Kind of a, no duh, Moshe, but there's actually more to it. Okay, so Moshe says, and surely the thing is known. For Moshe had been meditating in his heart, wherein have Israel sinned, that they should be enslaved more than any other nation. But upon hearing one of the quarreling men say right out what he, Moshe, had done, he said to himself, now the thing is known. Now I know why Israel are enslaved. Tale-bearing is rife among them. How can they ever be worthy of deliverance? And we'll get into that later when we talk about the Pesach lamb and why that whole 4 days. Okay, moving on. Now, when Pharaoh heard, which is obviously he's going to hear sooner or later, for when Pharaoh heard, for Datan and Aviram, the two Israelites who had been quarreling, at once rose up and informed on Moshe, whereupon he sought to slay Moshe. Pharaoh sent for a sword that had no equal, and had him struck with it 10 times upon the neck. But Moshe's neck became like a marble pillar, and the sword did him no harm. When Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh, said Rabbi Yanani, is it possible for a man to escape from a king? Good question. Yes, for after Moshe was seized, taken to the scaffold, and tied up, had the sword laid upon his neck, and was condemned to be beheaded, an angel disguised in the form of Moshe descended from heaven, so they seized the angel while Moshe escaped. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, for all the counselors who sat before Pharaoh at that time, some became mute, some deaf, some blind, some lame. When Pharaoh asked the mute, where is Moshe? They could not speak. When he asked the deaf, they did not hear. The blind, they did not see. The lame, they were unable to walk. It also says that in further commentary, it says that when they went to strike Moshe's neck, it became like stone. That the angel actually struck everybody blind, blinding light, and struck everybody blind, so that Moshe could escape because nobody could see him. Okay. So now we're on to Moshe and Midian. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. There's Yitro, or Hobab, or whoever. Yitro had 7 daughters. Does not the Holy One hate idolaters? Interesting. Yet he apparently allowed Moshe to find refuge with an idolater. Now we're told that, well, maybe it actually says it in here, but we're told that Yitro was basically a priest who knew all of the religions of the world. He knew all the customs and the rituals and everything like that. Okay? Really didn't have any particular favor to any particular one until. Okay. The fact is that Yitro had been a priest for idolatrous worship, but then realized that it had no substance. Rejected it, and through turning to God in penitence, even before the arrival of Moshe. So he summoned his townspeople and said, I have been ministering to you until now, but I am grown old. Choose another priest for yourselves. And there he brought forth all the paraphernalia used in the worship and turned it over to his townspeople. They excommunicated him immediately, declaring that no man should keep him company or work for him when he asked the shepherds to tend the flocks. They would not hear of it. Hence why his daughters are always out there. This is why his daughters had to go out to tend it. And the shepherds came and drove them away. So it makes a little more sense now. Okay. So Yithro's daughter said, an Egyptian delivered us. Was Moshe the Egyptian? Of course not. He was a Hebrew. But his dress was Egyptian. A parable provides another explanation for the reference to an Egyptian in the daughters' account of their deliverance. A man was bitten on the foot by a lizard and ran to immerse his feet in water. When he got to the river, he saw a child drowning in it. He stretched out his hand and pulled him out. The child said, but for you I would now be dead. The man replied, it was not I who saved you. It was the lizard who bit me and from whom I was fleeing. It was he who saved you. So too, when Yithro's daughter said to Moshe, may you grow in strength, you saved us from the shepherds. Moshe replied, it was the Egyptian whom I slew who saved you. That is why, speaking to their father, Yithro's daughters mention an Egyptian, meaning, who caused this man Moshe to come to our aid, the Egyptian who had been slain. Okay. Yeah, I know. Colleen, yes, I know. See, I keep it right here. Right here. But it's not very polite to be sucking on one of those while I'm trying to talk. And besides, it's I just swallowed wrong. That's all there is to it. I just swallowed wrong. I do that from time to time. Actually, I do it more often than I actually want to, but regardless. I'm old, leave me alone. Okay. So, we're on to the groaning of the children of Israel and the mission of Moshe. So it goes on to say, the king of Mitzrayim died. These words really mean that he became leprous. For a leper is regarded as dead, such as the same as a poor man. Now we talked about this with Yaakov. When Yaakov, fled from his brother, he was considered as a dead man because he had no possessions at all. Okay, so in this case, again, a leper is regarded as dead. Okay, thus when Miriam became a leper, Moshe prayed. Now again, I'm going to dispute this, okay, because tzara'at is not leprosy. It is not leprosy. It is a completely different affliction. Okay? Leprosy is a disease. Tzara'at is an affliction. There's a big difference between the two. Okay, so we'll get into that later. Thus, when Miriam became a leper, Moshe prayed, "Let her not be as one dead," on account of Paro's leprosy. As the Israelites groaned. Why did they groan? Silly question, I would think. Because the magicians of Mitzrayim said to Paro, "There is no cure for you unless we slay 150 Israelite children in the evening and 150 in the morning, and you bathe twice daily in their blood." When the Israelites heard this decree, they began to groan and lament. And God heard their moaning. Rabbi Akiva said Paro's executioners used to suffocate Israelites by immersing them in the walls of buildings. These would cry out from the structure, from the walls, and the Holy One heard their moaning. Okay. So, Moshe was tending the flock. Yeah, it says, I'm older than you. Okay. So, now Moshe was tending the flock. The Holy One tested Moshe by means of the flock. As our masters explained, when Moshe, a teacher, our Moshe Rabbeinu, was tending Yithro's flock in the wilderness, a lamb scampered off, and Moshe followed it until it approached a shelter under a rock. As the lamb reached the shelter, it came upon a pool of water and stopped to drink. When Moshe caught up with it, he said, "I did not know that you ran away because you were thirsty. Now you must be tired." So he hoisted the lamb on his shoulder and started walking back with it. The Holy One said, "Because you showed such compassion in tending the flock of a mortal, the flock of a mortal, as you live, you shall become shepherd of Israel, the flock that is mine." Okay. And God called unto him out of the midst of the bush. The Holy One said to Moshe, do you not sense that I live in distress whenever Israel find themselves in distress? Just look at the place out of which I speak to you, out of a thorn bush. I, if one dare attribute such words to God, fully share in their distress, as implied by the words, "In all their afflictions he is afflicted." That was from Isaiah. Okay. And Moshe was tending the flock. And so on and so forth, Lord appeared to him in the flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Shimon bar Yochai, said, when the Holy One revealed himself from the heights of heaven, why did he choose to speak to Moshe out of a thorn bush? Because of all the bushes in the world, the thorn bush is the most apt to inflict harm. Whenever a bird flies into it, the bird cannot emerge unscathed, for many parts of its body will be ripped open. So too, for him who is everywhere, the task of aiding anyone to emerge free and unscathed out of slavery in Mitzrayim was more delicate by far than out of any other slavery in the world. No manservant or maidservant other than Hagar had ever before emerged out of Mitzrayim free and unscathed. Okay, there's a further commentary on this one. To reassure Moshe, who feared that being freed from Mitzrayim, the thorn bush, was impossible, God separated the thorn bush, in a flame of fire. God appeared in the thorn bush in a flame of fire, by way of saying that the fire of freedom for Israel will nevertheless burst forth. Okay, another comment. Out of the midst of a thorn bush, Rabbi Yosef said, "Why out of a thorn bush? It is characteristic of a thorn bush that when a man sticks his hand into it, he is not injured because the sharp ends of the thorn are pointed downward. But when he attempts to draw his hand out of the bush, the thorns will fasten to it. Likewise, when Israel first entered Mitzrayim, they were well received, being told, the land of Mitzrayim is open before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell." But when they wanted to leave, the Egyptians fastened onto them, as when Pharaoh said, "I will not let Israel go." Okay. A heathen asked Rabbi Yehoshua ben Koha, "Why did the Holy One see fit to speak to Moshe out of a thorn bush and not out of another kind of tree?" He replied, "Had he spoken to Moshe out of a carob tree or out of a sycamore tree, you would have asked me the same question. But to dismiss you with no reply is not right. So I will tell you why. To teach you that no place on earth, not even a thorn bush, is devoid of his presence." Oh, snap, huh? Okay. The bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Why did the Holy One show Moshe such a symbol? Because Moshe had thought to himself that the Egyptians might consume Israel. Therefore the Holy One showed Moshe a fire burning in a thorn bush, which was nevertheless not consumed, saying to him, "As the thorn bush through burning is not consumed, so the Egyptians will be unable to consume Israel." Moshe. Here the Hebrew text provides no stop equivalent to a comma between the two occurrences of Moshe. This is from chapter 3, verse 4. Why not? This question may be answered by the parable of the man overloaded by excessively heavy burden, who cries out in one breath, "Somebody, somebody, come quickly and take this load off of me." Rabbi Yehoshua, the priest, Bar Nehemiah, said, when God revealed himself to Moshe, Moshe was but a novice in prophecy. The Holy One said, "If I reveal myself to him in a thunderous voice, I will terrify him. If in a whisper, he will take little note of prophecy." What did God do? He revealed himself in a voice to Moshe's father, whereupon Moshe answered, in the voice of Moshe's father, whereupon Moshe answered, "Hineni, here I am. What does my father wish?" God said, "I am not your father. I am the God of your father. In my need to win you over, I addressed you in the familiar voice so that you would not be afraid." Okay. And Moshe hid his face. Rabbi Yehoshua bar Korah said Moshe did not act properly in hiding his face. For had he not done so, the Holy One would have revealed to him what is above and what is below, what had been and what is destined to be, as what he did when just before Moshe's death. Therefore, when subsequently Moshe did not want to see it, when Moshe did want to see it all, saying, "Show me, I pray thee, thy glory," the Holy One chided him, saying, "When I came to show you my face, you hid yours. Now I am telling you that man shall not see me and live. When I wished to have you see me, you did not wish it. Now, when you wish to see me, I do not wish it." But Rabbi Rabban differed. Moshe acted properly in hiding his face. The Holy One said to Moshe, "Since you showed me respect by hiding your face when I came to show you my face, you shall live. You will be seeing me on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. You will neither eat nor drink, but will be feasting upon the splendor of the presence. As is said, Moshe knew not that the skin of his face set forth beams of splendor." Okay. And again, further on, Moshe, right before his death, Hashem showed him. It said it showed him all the land. And what the rabbis tell us is that when it says showed him all the land, what it meant was not only did he show him all of Israel, Eretz Israel, he showed him all of the history of Eretz Israel. Therefore, because of this, they said the last chapter of the Torah was written in Moshe's tears because of what he knew was going to happen to Israel. Not because he was going to die, because he knew he was going to die. And he didn't quite outlive his brother Aharon, but as far as age-wise. But the reason that he was crying and writing in his tears was because he had seen the history of the Jewish people. Okay. And Moshe said to God, watch the time here, I get going and forget about it. And Moshe said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" Moshe was saying to the Holy One, so asserted Rabbi Nahariam, "You say to me, go and bring Israel out. How can I manage it with so many people to take care of? Where can I shelter them from the heat in summer and from the cold in winter? Whence can I provide food and drink? How many midwives are there among them? How many pregnant women? How many infants? What food have you prepared for their midwives?" What delicacies have you prepared for those who are pregnant? How many parched grains and nuts have you prepared for the little ones? The Holy One replied, enough. Dude, who are you talking to? Okay, no, that's not really what it says. It says, the Holy One replied, you will understand from the parched bread Yisrael will take with them out of Mitzrayim, the bread that will suffice them for 30 days, how I intend to provide for them. Okay. And we find out later on, they start complaining, he sends quail. He gives them manna. And it says whatever they desired, the manna, when they prepared it to taste like, that's exactly what it tasted like. So it wasn't like they were, they didn't have delicacies or whatever. It took on the flavor of whatever the person wanted it to be. But then again, they still complain. Imagine that, a Jew complaining. Seriously? Really? Does that even happen? Okay. So, yeah, I'm reading, what was it? Benjamin sent me a book. It's about kvetching. And I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it. But yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, for a long time. It's in our history. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, I am forever I am. The Holy One said to Moshe, go tell Israel, I am he who is with you in this servitude, and I am also he who will be with you during servitude under other kingdoms. Moshe replied, Master of the universe, sufficient unto the hour is its own affliction. Why call to mind affliction yet to come? The Holy One said, very well, just tell them, I am hath sent me unto you. For I am what I will become. Okay, so, okay, that's, yeah, really kind of difficult to explain. Well, okay, just tell them I am sent you. And thou shalt take in thy hand this rod, the rod that was created at the twilight. I actually spoke about this when we were doing last week, that the certain things that were created in those last moments before the Shabbat, the first Shabbat, and one of them was the rod. The rod that was created at twilight on creation's sixth day was handed to Adam in Gan Eden. Adam handed it to Enoch, Enoch to Shem, Shem to Abraham, Abraham to Yitzhak, Yitzhak to Yaakov, Yaakov to Egypt. Yaakov took it to Egypt and handed it to his son Yosef. When Yosef died, all his household effects were moved and deposited in Pharaoh's palace. Now, Yitro pops up again. Yitro was one of Pharaoh's magicians or priests. And he saw the rod and these signs on it. He coveted it in his heart, and he took it, brought it to his place, and planted it in the garden by the house, which we talked about last week. No man could come near it until Moshe arrived in the land of Midian, entered the garden of Yithro's house, saw the rod, made out the signs on it, stretched forth his hand, and took it. When Yithro saw this, he said, this man is destined to redeem Israel from Mitzrayim. That is why he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moshe as his wife. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. So let's hit Moshe returns to Mitzrayim, And that's where we will end tonight, and that's where we will end. And next week we will pick back up in the Torah. Okay, so Moshe returns to Mitzrayim, and Moshe went. Where did he go? To get his wife and children. Yitro asked him, "Where do you propose to take them, Moshe?" "To Mitzrayim." Yitro, "Those who are in Mitzrayim wish to get out, and you would take your family there? Are you nuts?" Moshe, "Soon Israel will go out and stand at Har Sinai to hear from the mouth of the Holy One, 'I am the Lord thy God.' Should not my children, like the others in Israel, hear this?" So Yitro said to Moshe, go in peace, enter Mitzrayim in peace, and come back in peace." Okay, go and return to Mitzrayim. Rabbi Reuven said, and when the Holy One told Moshe in Midian, "Go, return to Mitzrayim," the command was divided into two distinct voices and assumed two personages. Moshe heard one voice saying in Midian, "Go, return to Mitzrayim," while Aharon in Mitzrayim heard the other word saying, "Go into the wilderness to meet Moshe." Hence, God thundered miraculously in two places with his voice. And again, that comes from Eov 37. And finally, for this evening, and Moshe took his wife and his sons. At the very time, the Holy One said to Aharon, "Go unto the wilderness to meet Moshe." Aharon went to meet him, embraced him, and kissed him, saying, "Moshe, where have you been all these years?" Moshe, in Midian. Aharon, who are the little ones and the women with you? Moshe, my wife and children. Where are you taking them? To Mitzrayim. Aharon, we were worried about those already there, and now we shall also have to worry about these. Immediately Moshe said to Zipporah, "Go back to your father's house." Scripture later refers to this act in saying, after Moshe had sent her away in Shemot chapter 18. And that, my friends, is going to conclude our study for this evening. We are pretty well caught up. And we will return, as I said, we will return to the Torah study next week. I hope you are enjoying this study, and I hope you are actually getting something from the study. As I said, we've been at this for a while, and if you we saw the Daf Yomi, the completing of the Talmud takes 7 years, and that's a daily event. Okay, it took us about a year to get through Breshit. Probably take us about a year to get through Shemot. So we've got 5 years to look forward to, or 4 more years to look forward to. Okay, don't forget Friday night at 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service, double parsha this week. And Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shachrit and Musaf. And don't forget, on Mondays is Zeta's Story Corner, in which he is right now reading from the Silly World of Helm. Until then, everybody, we'll just simply say, Laila Tov.